Yo, what's up gamers? Welcome back to the channel, and today I have a real treat for you. Do you guys want to see some of the foulest, most bigoted content within Grand Theft Auto 5? Well, right this way. Just log into online and go into your arcade office. Right up the stairs, and here we are. What, you don't see it? Let me give you a better view. Yep, that's right. A fucking action figure has at least 3 journalist panties in a wad right now. Because it turns out, Los Santos is not all sunshine and rainbows. But don't worry, it gets much worse than this. Just drive up to the Cockatoo's bar in Vinewood. And here we are, the trans NPCs of GTA 5. However, I was rudely interrupted by a man in a tank, because of course this is online. I then proceeded to go after him in my own tank, and had to blow him up. I then also had to take down his teammate and an oppressor. So back at the bar, and you can notice something about these NPCs, is that they aren't trans. These are drag queens. And this will be in a very important detail, because after the horrors you just witnessed came to light, Rockstar Games, of course, had to make the right move and remove the NPCs from the next generation ports of the game. Unfortunately, this meant they also removed the action figure with interchangeable genitalia. This momentous occasion in history has been well documented by our favorite gaming journalist site, Kotaku. And they're out here letting all the players know just how vile Rockstar Games is. And now, let's start reading this shit. The recently released PS5 and Xbox Series X versions of Grand Theft Auto 5 seem to be missing some content that was considered by many to be transphobic. These elements had received criticism from some journalists and players, though Rockstar Games has not publicly commented on what motivated the decision to make these changes. Something that a lot of so-called gaming journalists like to do is go onto Twitter and find about 3 people complaining about something, and then treat that as outrage from the broader community, when in fact this is not the case. The removal of this content was first spotted by a Reddit user who noticed a small change in one of the in-game offices. In older versions of the game, a row of packaged action figures on display included one that features interchangeable genitalia, is dressed in pink with garish makeup, and has a large penis-like bulge. This action figure, which could certainly be interpreted as a nasty joke about trans women, is no longer present in the newest release. Also removed from the latest version of GTA 5 are NPCs that were labeled as drag queens in the game's director mode and tagged as transvestites within the game's files on PC. These characters also sported garish makeup, bulges, and could often be heard telling the player they were using hormones. Again, these characters were obviously a joke at the expense of trans women. Oh my god, guys. I never thought I would live to see the day in which Grand Theft Auto would be known for mocking certain groups of people. And I'd also like to point out that 90% of the player base has no idea that these things are even in the game. And the article is going to try to make it seem like this insignificant joke is somehow responsible for the death of trans people. Continuing on, both the action figure and the NPC drag queens are now gone from the game. The models for the NPCs do remain in the game's files, but no longer spawn. Last year, Kotaku's own Carolyn Petit wrote a story about GTA 5's awful depiction of trans women, citing the now removed NPCs as well as the abundance of transphobic ads throughout the game's world, which still exist in the game as of 2022. This story was then directly referenced by the LGBT gaming advocacy group Out Making Games, and an open letter to Rockstar. In the letter, the group called on the company to remove transphobic elements from the game, stating that Rockstar had an opportunity to have a positive impact on the new generation of players coming to GTA 5 via these fresh ports. Well, first things first, there's no way this group actually had any impact, considering they only have about 1,600 Twitter followers. Despite this, they're single-handedly claiming that they were the ones responsible for this change. You know, as opposed to a corporation just wanting to avoid controversy. And for whatever reason, this is apparently such a big deal. You know, hatred in the world has been vanquished. Even the people on their own Twitter are roasting them for this. So I guess that says a lot about how prestigious this organization is. And one other thing, this article is saying that there's somehow going to be a next generation of GTA 5 players. when most of the people buying the newest release of the game are coming from the previous version. Additionally, removing the content will cause it to leave absolutely no impression of the player because it does not exist. Often, people respond to concerns like this by pointing out that you can target and kill almost anyone in Grand Theft Auto 5. The game is equal opportunity in the freedom it offers you to wreak havoc across Los Santos. If you want to, you can target white guys in cargo pants or people doing yoga. But there's absolutely nothing equal opportunity about the position trans people hold in society right now. And unlike other random NPCs, the way Rockstar designed GTA 5's trans people actively plays into the hateful stereotypes harbored by many transphobic players. The trans sex workers you can encounter with their garish makeup and prominent penis bulges seem calculated to be ridiculous and repulsive to players who bring their pre-existing transphobia to the game with them. It's as if they're designed specifically so that some players could relish hurting them and killing them because they are trans. First things first, these NPCs are not sex workers. I have no idea where this person got that information from. Sure, they may dress the type, but if you did any bit of research into the situation, and trust me, many have, you would immediately find out that you cannot hook up with these people. So unfortunately, the author of this piece can't live out their fantasies. And the so-called journalist who wrote this also claims that these NPCs are particularly exaggerated, when as a matter of fact, basically everything in this game and the entire rest of the series is an over-exaggeration of real life. But I guess these NPCs are so special and precious that the author can't stand the thought of them being hurt in any way.
Gays of America are the only group left untouched by war. They're special, pure and rare, like a gleaming diamond or a snow-white colt. We must protect them. It has been the solemn oath of every man in uniform to lay down his life in defense of America's precious, precious homosexuals.
How many soldiers' lives is the life of one gay man worth?
7.
You know, what if some maniac goes around beating all the trans NPCs to death with golf clubs and hammers? Kinda like how players treat the actual sex workers of the game. Now, why do people do this? Because it's fun, of course. The only way to say that this would be harmful in any way is if you also believe that video games cause violence, which, judging by the intelligence of these individuals, I don't think that would be much of a stretch. Rockstar has yet to officially discuss its reasons for removing the content, or what other details, if any, may have been changed. Kotaku contacted Rockstar Games about the removed NPCs and action figures, but didn't receive a response in time for publication. This is just laziness at this point. I doubt they even sent that email, because if they did, and got the response, they could have edited the article to include this updated information. In a short blog posted yesterday, Outmaking Games responded to the discovery of the removed NPCs and action figures, saying that the group is thrilled by the adjustments. Grand Theft Auto 5 is a wildly popular game with millions of players worldwide, wrote Outmaking Games. This change can have a huge impact on the way that many of those players see trans people. Thanks to everyone at Rockstar who prioritized this issue. We ourselves are game developers and understand that even small changes like this take coordinated time and effort. Well, if there's one thing that Rockstar definitely doesn't have, is coordinated time and effort. But what I want to know is, how are these NPCs changing people's perception? These are just random characters in a video game. These are not real people. They are satire. But I guess this confirms that they believe that video games lead to real-world violence. Now let's just say articles like this attract a certain type of audience, so to say. Like this guy, whose argument revolves around a certain type of people based on certain characteristics not being allowed to express their own opinion on a subject. Oh, and by the way, someone of said group who's not allowed to have an opinion chooses to express it anyways. And you know what? This guy lets them because he agrees with it. So in other words, people are not allowed to have an opinion on a video game that they enjoy based on the fact that they themselves are not trans. However, you can have an opinion on this subject matter if you agree with my own. However, there is some hope to this. Like this guy, who says, the GTA series has almost always been about mockery. Everything is on the table. Politicians, left and right, nerds, hip-hop, jocks, Hispanics, rednecks, gay people, weed smokers, reality TV, billionaires, you name it. I guess the times are changing. It makes you wonder what GTA 6 will be like. And this dude is absolutely right. However, the transgender white knight shows up and says that perhaps one that won't continue to demean people that are most at risk of being murdered. Oh, and here's a fun fact. This dude is completely wrong. As you can see here, the total number of hate crime incidents in the United States in 2019 and 2020 show that gender identity is only a drop in the bucket when it comes to hate crimes, and with the most prominent being, guess what? Race. With another mention from that list being gay people being about 5 times more likely than that of trans people. But don't worry, this guy just keeps getting worse. For example, this user says that cops in real life have a high chance of being murdered, which, by the way, being a cop is one of the most dangerous jobs you can take on. You're constantly throwing yourself into danger, and really the only thing that's saving you is your training and your equipment. But this genius decides to cite the death count of officers as an indicator of how dangerous the job is, and he does this by citing Yahoo. And then he goes on to explain that the #1 killers of police officers is COVID, which is not even mentioned anywhere. Well, gamers, I have to end the video here, otherwise you might overdose on your retard juice. Today we learned that violence against trans people in video games leads to real-world violence, similar to how Call of Duty leads to school shootings. We also learned that certain groups of people aren't allowed to have opinions on a video game they enjoy. In reality, removing this content from the game will accomplish literally nothing, and yet gaming journalists love to exaggerate the influence of certain things to help drive viewership to their sites. Viewership which has thankfully been on the decline in recent years. As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you motherfuckers next time.